Hello guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about transfer slots. First thing I'd be wondering, what's a transfer slot? So for those of you who don't know, we're just going to go over that real quick. Basically, a transfer slot is the little tiny rectangle slit in your throttle bores that you expose as you open the throttle. So as you give it more throttle, it exposes more of that rectangle, which allows, that is your transfer slot. Now that is controlled by your curb idle screw, or your transfer slot screw, but I think they call it a curb idle screw, which is located right on your throttle shaft. Most of you who deal with a carburetor are pretty familiar with that screw probably. It adjusts your idle RPM a lot. Now, this is something that I did not come up with on my own, but it's something that needs to be more known than it is. You do not use that screw to set your idle RPM. That's not what you use to set your idle RPM. You simply are using that to adjust the position of the throttle at idle, not to control the RPM. That may not make a whole lot of sense, but just hear me out. So, how do you set your curb idle screws? First thing you're going to do is, whenever you're putting your carburetor together, go ahead and set that to a square. So basically you want your rectangle slot to look like a square. And then you're going to hook your vacuum gauge to your ported vacuum port. So real quick, I'll go over with you what that is. Your ported vacuum port is a vacuum port that is located above the throttle blades. So whenever the throttle is shut, it does not see vacuum, and it is just at the atmospheric pressure that the atmosphere is at. So you hook your hose up to that. On a Holley, they're either on the metering block here, like this 600 happens to be, or some of them are on the throttle plate. It just depends on what it is. You should be able to see no vacuum on idle with that port. And if you hook it up to a manifold vacuum port and you see a vacuum at idle, then you know you're at the wrong port. So you'll hook that to your ported vacuum port. Again, you should see no vacuum whenever the engine is running. And you're going to then take your curb idle screw and you're going to turn it with your screwdriver just until you see a little bit of vacuum show up on your gauge. Just the slightest amount of vacuum. As soon as you see that slightest amount of vacuum, just turn the screw back in until it goes away. Just till it goes away. And once it's at zero, then you have your curb idle screw set properly. Now, why is it important to set your curb idle screw properly? Well, the position of your throttle controls how much vacuum the booster sees. On idle, your boosters are not really providing any fuel. They might trickle a little bit out, but there's no vacuum being drawn on the boosters as much as there is pulled through the idle transfer slots, which are controlled by your idle mixture screws, which are on your metering block here. These control the air-fuel mixture on idle. They don't really control anything else, at least on a Holley. Not real familiar with Edelbrocks or Carters or Autolites, but on a Holley, that's the way it is. So again, why is it important to set those properly? If you don't see enough vacuum right away, whenever you first crack open the throttle to your boosters, they're gonna lag behind, and you're gonna experience a lean hesitation. But if you set those just to the point of vacuum, so as soon as you touch the throttle with your foot, it's gonna expose the boosters to vacuum and give them a vacuum signal to then siphon fuel into the Venturis. So if you can't use that curb idle screw to set your idle RPM, then how are you supposed to set your idle RPM, right? Well, so once you get that set right, your RPM should be pretty low. It shouldn't be like 1,000 RPM or something unless you're just completely off. First, before you even touch your carburetor, you're going to set your ignition timing to something to start with. I would say between 6 and 14, 8 and 14. This thing seems to like about 14, 15 degrees timing. Because believe it or not, your ignition timing will change your idle RPM a lot, actually. But once you get your transfer slot set up, then I would start messing around with your idle mixture screws until your engine smooths out. Now you're going to want to make very small increments, or if you have an AFR gauge, you can set your AFR to what you want as well. That would be the easiest way to do that, but I know some of you don't have that. And you can also use a vacuum gauge in your manifold vacuum to check your idle AFR as well. But I have not found that method to be super successful, especially if you have a bigger cam, because vacuum fluctuates a lot. So in my experience, it's just better to get it where the engine is just smooth and has great crispy throttle response. And you can also smell it too. If it's too rich, you're going to smell it. It just takes a little bit of paying attention to what is happening. So once you get those screws right, your idle mixture screws, and you get your timing right, your engine should be pretty smooth and have great throttle response. So this was mainly just about setting your idle mixture screw, your transfer slots correctly. I just feel like it's a piece of information that gets lost in the ways, you know. It's kind of just, you don't always see it. And especially when I first started, I didn't know that, to set your curve idle screw with the vacuum gauge on your quarter port. So anyway guys, I hope that made sense. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you can take this and apply it to your car if you didn't know it already. Really hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you next time on It'll Run.